Raya is more accurate than Dara. Also, since Prithu Maharaj offered everything to the Kumaras, the word kosha, treasury, need not be separately mentioned. Kings and emperors used to keep a private treasury, which was known as Ratna Bandha. The Ratna Bandha was a special treasury room, which contained special jewelries, such as bangles, necklaces, and so on, which were presented to the king by the citizens. This jewelry was kept separate from the regular treasury house, where all the collected revenues were kept. Thus, Prithu Maharaj offered his stock of private jewelry to the lotus feet of the Kumaras. It has already been admitted that all the king's property belonged to the Brahmanas, and that Prithu Maharaj was simply using it for the welfare of the state. If it were actually the property of the Brahmanas, how could it be offered again to them? In this regard, Sripad Sridhar Swami has explained that this offering is just like the servant's offering of food to his master. The food already belongs to the master, for the master has purchased it. But the servant, by preparing food, makes it acceptable to the master and thus offers it to him. In this way, everything belonging to Prithu Maharaj was offered to the Kumaras. Omagyantimanandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunalitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupakadamayam Dadati Swapatantikam Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So here we're seeing that Prithu Maharaj is giving charity to the Kumaras. There's Kshatriya Dharma. Kshatriyas have to give charity. Also it is Grihastha Dharma. Grihastha Dharma means Grihastha must give charity. There are 4 ashrams. What does ashram mean? Shelter. Ashraya. Ashraya means shelter. Ashram means place of shelter. So your ashram is a place of shelter. I was speaking to some brahmacharis last week. We're having some discussion. And I was saying, actually ashram is not critical. It is not the most important thing in spiritual life. You can say, well, I'm a brahmachari, or I'm a grihastha, I'm a vanapasa. It's not the most important thing in spiritual life. How you chant the holy name is the most important thing in spiritual life. Now, your spiritual advancement is based upon your chanting of the holy name, the quality of your chanting. That's what is most important. That's what attracts Krishna. Your ashram doesn't attract Krishna. You're a brahmachari, grihastha, vanapasa, sannyasi. That's not particularly attractive to Krishna. Because Krishna is not more attached to brahmacharis or grihasthas or brahmanas, or vanaprasthas or sannyasis, not particularly. Of course, if someone's a sannyasi, he will be dear to Krishna, because he's renouncing everything. That's true. But a grihastha who renounces everything can be equally as dear to Krishna. This is taught in the Srimad Bhagavatam Rita. Gopal Kumara is traveling. Right? Who is the first person that he meets? He's a great brahmana. But then the brahmana says to him, actually, more exalted than me is the king, who is in South India. He's even more exalted than him. So the brahmana was saying the Kshatriya is more exalted. Because he's giving everything to Krishna. So that is the consciousness of the devotee, to give everything to Krishna. So Krishna is not so much looking at your ashram. He's not so much looking at that. You know, you're a brahmana, you're a brahmachari or a grihastha like that. That's not what most important. The point is, what is the quality of your chanting? Because the quality of your chanting will equate to the level of your bhakti or devotion in your service. Right? You will put effort into your service according to the quality of your chanting. Right? What is Krishna looking for in your service?
Love.
Very good, love. Are you giving love to Krishna in your service?
Sometimes.
Sometimes. What about the rest of the time? What are you giving the rest of the time?
Yeah, I give.
Huh?
Yes, I do.
Yes, you do. So what is Krishna looking for in our service? What's he looking for? Love, that's true. But what's he looking for?
Absorption. Or absorption.
Absorption, very good. Yeah. And how is that displayed? Intention, yeah. How's your intention displayed? Surrender, very good. How's your surrender displayed?
Attention to details.
Very good, very good. It is attention to detail. Right? The attention to detail that you have in your service, that is a display of your bhakti or your devotion. Right? So as we're explaining, your spiritual advancement is based upon the quality of your chanting. Right? What is the quality of your chanting? All of us are chanting Hare Krishna. All of us are chanting the holy name. What is the quality of your chanting? Right? How much sambandha or relationship is established in your chanting? How close are you to Krishna while chanting? That's the measure of your bhakti. How close you are to Krishna. Then, according to the quality of your chanting, that will be displayed in your service attitude. Prabhupada writes this. He says, spiritual advancement is based upon the service attitude of the devotee. Right? So what is your service attitude? Right? That will manifest according to your the quality of your chanting. Right? How good is your service attitude? And then your service attitude, how do we know who's got a good service attitude? It comes down to attention to detail in service. Right? You have to show, is there attention to detail in service? Are you attentive, right, into all the details in your service? Because that's what Krishna is looking at. Right? This devotee is going out of their way to serve. Anyone can serve. We can all do the service. We can all do the same services, basically. Some of us are specialised, some of us are better, some of us can't do certain things, but most of us can do the same thing. All of us can sweep the floor in the temple. But Krishna is looking at the attention to the detail. Are you doing it quickly? Are you doing it properly? Right? Are you making sure everywhere, everything, all the petals are picked up? Sometimes you come and see a few petals here and there. Is that good? No, that's not attention to detail. Krishna sees all of these things. Right? So this is how the bhakti manifests. This is what is important in devotional service. Ashram is secondary. Right? When Rupa Goswami lists the 64 angas of bhakti, right? Vana and ashram are not mentioned within the 64 items of bhakti. They are not items of devotional service. Rupa Goswami explains this at the end of chapter 5, I think it is, 4 or 5, in the Nectar of Devotion. Right? He says Vana and ashram are not items of devotional service. They are secondary. Right? They are gona. Right? They are secondary in devotion. They support devotional service, but they are not devotional service in and of themselves. So that's not what Krishna is looking for. Krishna is not looking for which ashram you are in, particularly. That's not the most important thing. The most important thing is your service attitude. So then, because we're in the material world, we have a material body. And because you have a material body and a material mind, you have to be situated properly according to Vana and Ashram. So they're not the most important thing. However, you're in the material world, so you need to recognize it. Right? We all get instructions that change our lives. If you look back at your devotional career, your devotional service, there'll be certain instructions that just changed everything. You got a particular instruction, that was it. Your devotional service went a particular path, a particular course. Or you accelerated in your devotional service. Right? So I remember many years ago I was listening to one lecture by my guru, and then he said in the lecture, he said, you can't get out of the material world until you realize you are in the material world. Right? And that changed my life, that one instruction. Right? Because then 6 months later I changed ashram. I was a brahmachari at the time, then I moved to greenhouse life. Because I realized I had material desires. Right? I can falsely pretend those material attachments are not there, but then how will I advance in devotional service? Okay? So until you realize that you are conditioned and what your material desire and what your adhikar is, then you can't progress in devotional service. Now sometimes it's difficult to work out our own adhikar, our own qualification, because we tend to give ourselves more credit than what may be due. Most of us do that. So then we look at ourselves. Right? So it's hard to be objective. Right? Do you need to get married? No? You're probably not the best person to ask. Right? Probably better to ask the devotees around you. They will give you the instruction. They will give you the advice. Then you have to listen. Right? So you need Shiksha Guru, you need Diksha Guru, you need advice from superiors to help you make the right decisions. But once you realize you are conditioned and you're attached, then from that platform you can make advancement. Prabhupada gives famous and long descriptions of this in the pastime in the 8th canto of Gajendra, that pastime. The Prabhupada speaks all about this. Being properly situated in devotional service according to your adhikar. Right? Prabhupada draws the analogy. Gajendra and the crocodile are fighting. Who is winning? It just depends on the environment they're situated in. Crocodile wins in the water, Gajendra wins on the land. Right? A crocodile can't take down an elephant on the land, but in the water he can. And then Prabhupada draws the analogy. Right? If you're in Grihastha ashram, right, for some devotees, they'll be strong. And for some devotees, in Brahmachari ashram or Vanaprastha Sannyasa ashram, they'll be strong. So you have to find. Because the material world is not easy. Does anyone know what I'm talking about here tonight? It's not an easy place. It's not easy to remain enthused in bhakti or devotional service. Kali Yuga is strong. Kali Yuga is distracting. You have to be serious to make advancement in Krishna consciousness. You have to be serious. You have to be locked in. You have to be focused. You can only be locked in and focused if you're in a strong position. So you have to be in the right ashram. That needs to be worked out. Right? When you're in the right, you will power in devotional service. If you're serious, then you will make advancement. So you have to be properly situated. Right? So we have to work out what is the best situation for us. And then once you do work out which situation with the help and guidance of your superiors, right, then you can make rapid advancement in devotional service. Now each ashram has a particular religious principle which governs the ashram. Right? Brahmachari has a particular religious principle, Grihastha does, Vanaprastha does, and Sannyasa does. So we'll start with the Brahmacharis because they're first. Right? What is the religious principle for the Brahmachari? We'll ask the Brahmacharis. What is your religious principle?
Svadhyaya, spiritual studies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Technically it's called Vijja, but Svadhyaya means the same thing. Yeah. It means study. Why are you a Brahmachari or a Brahmacharini? Because it gives you time to study. Right? And if you think it doesn't, then just change ashram and you'll see what we're talking about. It's competitive. Being a grihasta is competitive. You've got wife who is competing for your time. You've got husband who is competing for your time. You've got children who are competing for your time. You've got financial responsibilities who are competing for your time. Like so many things. So that's why brahmachari, and Prabhupada actually says brahmacharini, life is the best. There's nothing else to do. Prabhupada says brahmachari has 3 bags. Sleeping bag, book bag, and japa bag. That's it, that's your life. Either you're chanting, you're distributing books or preaching, or you're taking rest. That's all there is. That is brahmachari life. That's why it's the best. Just fully focused on Krishna, nothing else. That's the best. So the religious principle is vijja. Vijja means study. That's the purpose. You're studying in the ashram of the guru. Who does the ashram belong to? The spiritual master. It belongs to Prabhupada. Prabhupada's ashram. And then you are meant to study in that ashram. Take advantage. Right? That's why in brahmachari ashram you don't associate with the opposite sex. Right? Except for necessity or service. You don't associate with the opposite sex, because then that frees you up and you have time. And if you're an actual brahmacharini and you're not meditating on the opposite sex, then your consciousness will be clear, and then you can focus, and you can study, and you can make lots of advancement in Krishna consciousness. That's the purpose of the ashram. Meant to study. And collect alms for the spiritual master. It's described in the 7th canto. It says the duties of the brahmachari, meant to collect alms for the spiritual master. You go out, you collect, you bring it back, you offer it to the spiritual master. And it says you serve the spiritual master with a mood of friendship. Mood of friendship, very loving and friendly towards the guru. Right? Offer everything to the guru. That's brahmacharini life. You don't keep anything for yourself. Grihastas keep something for themselves, for their families. But the brahmachari does not keep anything. Just gives it. So then, next one is called grihasta. What does grihasta, what is the religious principle? We'll ask the grihastas. What is your religious principle? Yeah, charity. Dana. That is the religious principle of the grihasta. That is how the grihasta becomes purified. That is the example being shown in this verse, in this section by Prithu Maharaj. What did he give to the Kumaras? Everything. Look at the list. What did he offer to the Kumaras? This is actual grihasta life. If you want to understand what grihasta life is, this is it. My dear Brahmanas, my life, my wife, my children, my home, my furniture, household paraphernalia, my kingdom, my strength, my land, and especially my treasury are all offered to you. That's grihasta life. It makes you want to be a brahmachari. You have to give everything. It's the same thing at the end of the day. If you're actually living like that, grihasta, see, I was discussing with some brahmacharis last week. There's no disadvantage in being in the grihasta ashram. I mean, on one level, of course, if you can be, brahmachari or renounced, then do it. Brahmacharini, then do it, of course. Right? But if you are a grihasta, there's no disadvantage. It's not an impediment to your devotional service or your spiritual advancement. It's not like you stop making spiritual advancement. When I was a brahmachari, I had association with some very fanatical brahmacharis.
You were one of them.
What's that?
You were one of them.
That's it. There's gradations. There's one guy who lives in Mayapur now who I think was a little more fanatical than me. You can judge. You can judge.
I know. I recognise when I see one.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. retract the statement if it's incorrect, I'll retract it. But I think there's one guy who I think was more fanatical than me. Right? So very fanatical, right? And they would preach. I didn't preach like this. They would preach like that. You have to be brahmachari for all circumstances, forever. That is the most important thing, right? Women are Maya, just like continuous. I wasn't like that. I was fanatical in other ways, but I wasn't like that. Always, just preaching like brahmachari, and then the guy's a grihastha anyway. Now he's married, he's been married for 20 years, and so what's the use of all the fanaticism, right? If we're not actually that. So there's no disadvantage being a grihastha. You can be equally as advanced, more advanced. Now, Bhakti Tirtha Swami, who was a sannyasi, a pure devotee, very advanced devotee, recognized by many, very advanced devotee. He said, not long before he left this world, he said there are grihasthas in ISKCON who are more advanced than the sannyasis. He said that. There are grihasthas who are more advanced. The ashram is not that's external. You take here, the example of Ramananda Roy, Bhavananda Roy. These are grihasthas, these are the government officials. Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Bhaktivinoda Thakur was the most advanced devotee practically in history. Right? One time, they were watching a slideshow in Mayapur. Prabhupada was watching it with his disciples. And Bhaktivinoda Thakur, a slide came up of a picture of Bhaktivinoda Thakur on the slideshow. And one devotee was dark and everyone was quiet. One devotee leaned over to Prabhupada and said, Prabhupada, you've done even more service than Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Right? And Prabhupada became very grave. Prabhupada said, Bhaktivinoda Thakur could have taken the whole universe back to Godhead, but he is very merciful. He left them here to give us some service to do. Right? That's Bhaktivinoda Thakur's power. Right? And he was grihastha, 10 kids, 12 kids, something like that. Extreme, but High Court Magistrate, the highest placed Indian in the British Raj. Right? Very elevated, very huge responsibilities, but he was fixed in the most exalted devotee. Grihastha Acharya, the 7th Goswami. Right? But he wasn't a Goswami, he wasn't living away from the family, he was living with the family, he was fully fixed. So ashram is not the most important thing. Otherwise, Rupa Goswami would have said that within the Nectar of Devotion. He doesn't say that. It's secondary. It's supportive. It's important, but it's supportive. So, for a grihastha to become purified, they have to give dana. You have to give charity. I was discussing this on the weekend. Some devotees came to the farm and one of the Bhakti Vriksha groups, and they had a little mini retreat. And I was giving some classes to them in the morning, and we're discussing this point. How much charity should the grihastha give? Right? Because Rupa Goswami says 50%. Right? So if you give 50%, how will you feel as a grihastha? Right? You'll be hurting. Right? And you will be feeling, who is this guy, Krishna? Taking 50% of God. You'll be, I guarantee, if you're giving 50%, you'll be thinking of Krishna every second of the day. That's a fact. That's why Rupa Goswami says 50%. Right? So then, 50% you can't give, because this day, you give 50%, you won't be able to pay for all of your kids' expenses. Just like my daughter, right? I have to, she got braces last month or something. $8,000. $8,000, right? And then her school trip, like her school camp, they're going to Indonesia. When I was a kid, we'd just go to Phillip Island. Right? It's nearly $4,000 for a school camp. I nearly had a heart attack. She comes home, she gives me this letter, and she just gives me this, looks at me with this smile on her face. All my friends are going, right? So, I laid on the floor for about half an hour, just crying to myself. And
Krishna.
this is grihastha life practically. If I gave 50% of what I earned to, I couldn't afford, because it's just the way, life is. So, okay, 50% may not be practical or possible for most devotees, but, so then the question is, how much charity should the grihastha give? The grihastha should give enough charity so they're feeling it and it's hurting a little bit. Because then you're giving, then you become Krishna conscious. Okay, so say I was saying this to the devotees on the weekend. If you earn, hypothetically, $1,000 a week, right? And then I said to the devotees, if you gave $10 a week to the temple, how would you feel? You wouldn't notice it, right? If you gave $100, how would you feel? Right? Some devotees began to say, okay. If I said, if you gave 200 a week, how would you feel? And then devotees say, okay, I'm feeling that. So that means that's around about what you should be giving. Because you should be feeling this. That's how you become purified in the grihastha ashram. Because you'll be thinking of Krishna, I guarantee. You'll be at work, you'll be thinking of Krishna, because you'll be thinking, I'm giving part of this to Krishna, and it's hurting me. Right? So therefore, you'll become Krishna conscious. Krishna will bless you. That is the way the grihasthas become purified. The other way the grihasthas become purified is by deity worship. Because grihasthas are attached to material form. Right? And how do you change your attachment from material form to spiritual form? You worship the deity. Right? All the ashrams should worship the deity, but particularly grihasthas. It is meant for them. And you should support the deity, so you should give donation, dana, to the deity. And then, if you make advancement in grihastha life, I remember many years ago I was listening to a lecture with my guru, and he said, the whole point of going through grihastha ashram is to develop renunciation. By the time you get through 25 years of grihastha ashram, you should be feeling detached. You shouldn't be feeling like, I want to do it all again. No, you should be feeling detached. That's the point of it. And if you are beginning to feel detached, it's working. And if you're not feeling detached, then we'll pray for you. But you should be feeling detached. It should be coming. That's the whole point. Because then the third ashram is called vanaprastha. Vana literally means the forest. It means the husband and wife, they leave household responsibilities and they begin to travel and preach. And technically in the old days you would go to the forest and you just concentrate on spiritual life. And then you become purified. What is the religious principle? Right. Vidya, dana, and then for the vanaprastha is? Austerity, yeah. Tapa. Right. Austerity. Rishabdev says in the 5th canto of the Bhagavatam, right? Tapo divyam. Right? By austerity, you become purified. Right? We only make advancement in Krishna consciousness when you perform austerity. What is austerity for the members of ISKCON? It's preaching. That's austerity. That's the austerity we willingly undertake. Right? It has to become a little difficult. Same thing as giving donations. To preach means we have to make sacrifice. If our life is just easy, right? I just come to the temple, I take nice prasadam, I go to a couple of bhakti vriksha programs, I sit down the back, I associate with all the devotees. That's not going to purify you rapidly. If you want rapid purification, you have to perform austerity. You have to organize the programs, because every time you organize something, it becomes an austerity. Right? It takes effort. You have to feed everyone. There's like devotees came on the weekend, right? And then they had to organize it, then all the devotees come, then you have to feed them all. When everyone leaves, you have to clean it all up. That purifies the consciousness. Right? When you take responsibility. Right? I remember many years ago I spoke to one of their senior devotees, one of Prabhupada's disciples. I was in India and I met them. They said, "What are you doing now?" And I told them the service I was doing. And they said, "You only make advancement when you take responsibility. The more responsibility you take for spreading this movement, right? Looking after this movement, serving this God. The more you become purified, the more you advance in Krishna consciousness. Don't expect an easy life. You know, the day I walked into this temple, I was looking for peace because I was suffering. So I was looking for peace. And then I saw the brahmacharis, and they were so peaceful there. I thought, that's what I want. And then I joined, and my life hasn't been peaceful since. Because they said, okay, now go down the crossways. Right? That was my first service, crossways. My first service was weeding the garden. First service, I thought I was just going to sit around and meditate all day or something. I said, no, weed the garden. Okay, so I did that. They said, okay, now crossways. So I went to crossways, 2 months. And then someone said to me, if you really want to make advancement, you need to go on Sankirtan, book distribution, like that. And I said, sure, well, what is that? I didn't even know what it was. Someone said to me, the way you really make advancement is Sankirtan. And I said, what is it? I'll do it. What is it? I said, well, I didn't even know what it was. Right? Go out, collect for the temple. So that's what I did for many years. Right? Because it purifies the consciousness. You're taking responsibility for spreading the movement. That's how you make advancement. Right? If you want an easy life, that's okay, you can do that, but you won't make much advancement. You'll be one of the ones who keep coming back. Right? But if you purify yourself and take responsibility, you'll go back to Krishna in this lifetime. That's possible. Right? So, Vijja, Dana, Tapa, and then final ashram is sannyas. Sannyas is an ashram that most of us will not formally enter into. Right? Most of us, right? Maybe there might be a few people in this room who might enter into that ashram. Right? But most of us not formally. But in consciousness, everyone has to become a sannyasi. Right? Tridandi. Right? The words, the thoughts, and the deeds fully engaged in Krishna's service, all of us have to do that. Especially at the end of our life. Everything just has to be fully for Krishna. Right? So formally we may not do it, but internally we all have to do it. That's Krishna's instruction in the Gita. Right? So what is the religious principle for the sannyasi? What's the Sanskrit? What's the word? Right? Vijja, Dana, Tapa, and then Satya. Satya. Param Satya, Dhimahi. Satya. The sannyasi only preaches the truth. Right? I heard one sannyasi say a number of years ago, the sannyasi's words are like fire. They will burn your material attachments, your false ego. They only speak the truth. They don't speak what you want to hear. Sadhu means one who cuts. They speak what you need. That's why I miss my guru's association. Because he would always just say what needs to be said. He would never not say it. That's why he was my dearest friend or my dearest master, because he would always say whatever you need to hear, he would just say it. He wouldn't say what you want to hear. And I keep looking in the world. Oh, where is someone like that? Where is someone like that? He would just say what you need to hear. Because not everyone does that. That's your best friend. Your best friend is the person who will just tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. Sadhu means one who cuts. So Satya means the truth. Sannyas is, if any of us take sannyas, or if we don't take sannyas, we can be sannyasis in consciousness. It means you just preach the absolute truth. That's all sannyas is for. Liberate the conditioned souls. That's why the sannyasi is the guru of all of the other varnas and ashrams. Right? We offer respect. That's why we call them Maharaj. Maharaj means king, great king. Right? Because we don't have great kings walking around anymore. So the sannyasis take that role. They are our guides, they are our leaders. Right? So we bow to them. Why do we bow to them? Prabhupada said, you bow down because they have conquered sex desire. And we have not. Therefore, you humbly have to bow down. Put your head at their feet. Or you can put your head on their feet if you can. Not always easy. But if you can. I used to put my head on my guru's feet. He would let me. And there's other senior devotees, sometimes there's others who don't. But, an important Vaishnava etiquette point, women cannot touch the feet of men. Understand this point, because, so women, they keep touching the feet of the sannyasis because they see the men do it. It's not appropriate. You cannot do it. You can touch, they leave their shoes outside when they come to the touch their shoes if you want to get purified in that way. Otherwise, the Vedic culture is your husband will touch the feet, and then you will touch your husband's feet. I tell my wife that, but she just gives me a... She's not so enthusiastic for that. She said, I'll just touch my guru's shoes. So that's the way to become purified. So satya means the absolute truth. That's what sannyasa is for. All of us have to become sannyasis. Externally, we may not take sannyas, externally, but internally, yes, we all have to become sannyas. So here in this verse, this section, we're hearing about how a grihastha becomes purified by dana. You have to give your life, your wife, your children, your home, your furniture, your household paraphernalia, your kingdom, your strength, your land, and especially your treasury. That's grihastha life. ISKCON's good, huh? They took everything from you. We just walked in here to be peaceful, and then now we've got nothing left. Everything given to Krishna. And we are happy. The devotee becomes happy, right? In the beginning, it might be like drinking hot sugar cane juice. It's burning your lips, but you can't stop drinking it. Basically, that's ISKCON. Tomorrow Krishna Maharaj said that about Prabhupada. He said that's what it was like being with Prabhupada. It was burning your lips, but you could be with him. Just want to be around him all the time. It was just burning you all the time because Prabhupada was so intense and demanding. That story I've told a few times. Tomorrow Krishna Maharaj was asleep on the ground. That hut in Mayapur, you go to Mayapur, there's the hut near the front gate. That's where Prabhupada lived before everything else was there. So half the hut was for the disciples, the other half was for Prabhupada. So everyone went to take rest, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, whatever. Prabhupada gets up at 12 o'clock, starts translating, everyone else is asleep. Tomorrow Krishna Maharaj was sleeping on the balcony outside because it was hot. There's no facility there back then. There's nothing there, it's just a hut. Right? So tomorrow Krishna Maharaj is there, sleeping outside on the balcony, and then someone is kicking him. So he wakes up in the dark, and he looks up and it's Prabhupada. Right? Prabhupada said, you are snoring. Tomorrow Krishna Maharaj said, I was not snoring. Prabhupada said, yes, you were snoring. Go and sleep somewhere else. Right? So tomorrow Krishna Maharaj gets up, walks off into the dark, into the fields, and there was 3 choices. There was a pile of sand, a pile of rocks, and some steel, because they were building their lotus building. So he looked at the 3, chose the sand, laid on the sand, took rest, got up the next morning and came and did his service. Prabhupada didn't even ask, did you have a good night's sleep? Where were you? Prabhupada just kicked him and said, come on, I'm trying to translate here, stop snoring. Right? Anyone else did that to you, right? Imagine, you would not, probably you would not take it. With Prabhupada, we think that's the greatest ecstasy. Prabhupada kicked me. I'd love to be kicked by Prabhupada. But that was the level of surrender that the devotees had towards Prabhupada. Right? Hot sugar cane juice, that is ISKCON. Right? Too intense, but we can't go away, so what can we do? Right? Okay, we'll stop here. Any questions or comments? What we discussed? Any other questions?
Thank you.
Okay, go on.
So we actually complete every sentence is actually just a concept. Thank you.
Okay. Well, actually, you had something?
No, I didn't mention that
you don't have to overanalyze or make devotional service overcomplicated. Prabhupada said simple for the simple and complicated for the complicated. So if you're sitting there all day thinking, oh, how do I know, is this right? That's overcomplicating things. You know, you just do your service. Like, you know, if I get up in the morning and I offer the arati to the deity, I just offer it with the best intention I can. Right? I'm meditating on the deities. Right? I'm offering these articles for their pleasure. That's just bhakti. Bhakti is simple. Right? You don't have to overcomplicate. You know when you're doing things properly because the deities are smiling at you. Right? Prabhupada says, this is the barometer of bhakti, when the deities are smiling. The deities are happy, you know you're doing it properly. You don't have to overanalyze it. Right? And then Krishna will reveal in your heart, Tesham Satata Yugdanam, right? In your heart he'll realize, he'll make you understand what it is what is defective.